Okay, it's 4 o'clock. We'll call to order the meeting of the Kerrville Economic Improvement Corporation. And Maggie has agreed to lead us in our invocation.
Great Spirit, we pray to you for your presence at our meeting today. We are so thankful for the opportunity to serve this community. We ask that you'll guide our decisions, give us wise judgment. We thank you for loving us. Amen.
Amen.
Kelly, do we have anybody signed up to speak today?
No, sir, no one was signed up.
Okay, well, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from the annual Economic Improvement Corporation meeting held on June 28th, 2021. Anybody have a motion for that?
Can we get it up on the screen?
The minutes?
And we don't have copies here. I mean, I read them, I don't have any comment, but there's no copy to look at.
Yeah, we usually don't have copies on the screen, but you can have a hard copy here.
Well, that's okay, I read them, I just thought, okay.
I'll make a motion, we approve them as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any further discussion? All those who approve, raise your hand. That carries unanimously. All right, next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the Eic Workshop, also held on June 28th. Any motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Don, second by Greg Appel. Any further discussion? None. All those approved, raise your hand to indicate, and that carries unanimously. All right, our next item on the agenda is the KEDC update. Mr. Salinas?
Well, that's for the budget. The next item. Well, we'll leave it there.
Martin?
No. All right, let's see, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'll start with some of the, there's been a series of articles in the local paper as far as different things happening in regards to the economy. So unemployment rate, we're at about 4.7% for the month of May. We've been asked about, forecasting that out for the end of the year. And our response has been, we're getting closer to normal rates. This time last year, we're still in close to double digits. With school, going back here in the next month and a half, and then, the holidays coming up. Can't believe I'm saying that already, but we're probably going to get close to 3%, maybe even lower by the end of the year, just at the rate that we're trending. Part of that is because of the extra unemployment benefits. I mean, those are now gone. And there's been a huge spike for demand for workers, not just locally, but throughout the state and in pockets of the United States as well. In some of the articles, today there was actually an article about the VA hospital receiving some more federal funding. So again, there's an economic impact associated with that. The PPP loans, there was something about that last week. And that's just money that's being funneled into our community. And that was pretty significant during COVID. So, there's some businesses that were able to remain open because of that. Other ones did not survive. And we knew that going in. Nationally, we continue to see economic gains that have not been seen in almost 40 years. So that's pretty impressive. And then housing shortage, you've heard us talk about that here for the last few months. That's now becoming a much more prominent headline nationally, not just locally or in the state. So we're not alone. The airport, I've been asked about that as well by some leadership as far as I think they're trying to recoup some lost state dollars. And the question has been, how important is the airport? To which my response is, whenever you have an airport in the community, it's usually one of your main economic pillars because it's a portal for money as far as investors and what have you, outside of the operations. But more importantly, the economic activity that it spurs as far as suppliers, so on and so forth. So airports typically are, economic engines and pillars in the community. Okay, so moving on to some of our projects. I mentioned at the last meeting that we're getting the attention of some technology-based projects. We continue working some of those projects. They're in the IT, and we're getting some traction with some data center-related projects as well. Just last week, actually, we met with one of those projects. It's still very preliminary. We met with EA and with Mike at the KPUB. We're trying to figure out the infrastructure needs. That's always a tricky part. Now keep in mind, especially on data centers, those are very low job numbers. Typically a data center will employ 10, 20, the bigger ones maybe 50 people. But the power that they utilize, the power that they use is it's up there close to what a foundry or a steel operation would use. They're huge power guzzlers. So whenever you have a municipal utility, it's good in that sense because there's going to be more activity with a utility, hence that's money coming back to our city coffers. Yes, sir.
Are the average wages per job pretty good with the data center?
Yes, actually they're above average wages and typically somewhere between the $70,000 to $100,000 range. Small job numbers, but very good in the wages. Last week we also had a follow-up meeting with Project Wildcat, so I'll talk about that one here in a bit more. We had a developer from San Antonio last week that they're looking for warehouse space. They're interested in buying and/or building some space, which is for us, it's like, what's about time, right? We've had all these other people looking at different areas of town, but nobody specifically for warehouses. They were looking at about a 10 to 20,000 square foot facility. And we told them, look, the activity that we're seeing is between 50 to 100,000, maybe even up to 150,000 square foot of space. Those are the projects that we're seeing in our pipeline. And basically we say, look, we just don't have enough space for the amount of activity that we have right now. So we're working with them right now with where we're going to be seeing ahead. We met with a housing developer as well. This was through the city. It's a major national brand. They're coming in from the Midwest. They're looking at acreage for a large scale development, and they've been asking about, as an EDC, what projects do you have in the pipeline, quality of life, quality of place. They're asking about that. Your demographics as far as young families, working families, spending power that's tied to some of these jobs. And then, of course, where are people moving in from, to which we said, well, California. Availability of banks, they've been asking about that and how open they are to working with developers. And then, the pitch, why Kerrville. So again, it's very good to see, very encouraging that we're getting on the radar of some of these major developers. We're also working with Dr. Faust with the school district. We've been distributing the RFP that they sent out for the old middle school property. So we're going to be reaching back out to some of the site selectors that we sent it to see what kind of traction we're getting with that. So there's more activity there. We had a visit last week. Last 2 weeks have been pretty crazy. Kildare was here, their ownership, their HR person and plant manager. They're looking at production very, very soon. So that's just around the corner. And they've talked about they're going to be bringing in about a dozen people to start the operation and then in turn start hiring local. So we're working with them specifically on the housing. They said, when we always meet with prospects for existing companies, we always say, how can we help? And they said, look, we just can't find houses. I felt like saying, well, I can't find one too, right? But so we're working with them right now as far as people that they're bringing in. Gulf Avionics, no major update there, but we know that by the end of the year, we're going to start discussions as far as what a new hangar would look like for them. And then that's doable on our end. Project Wildcat, that is a national firm, and they're currently in the due diligence phase, working with us in the city. It's a commercial venue. It's a mid-sized development. They've worked several large projects throughout the U.S., and they're specifically looking at some kind of a family entertainment venue here in the area. It's about 150 jobs, but again, this is retail, commercial. It's not in our wheelhouse. The city takes the lead on those, but we're always in a support role when we're working those projects. But I will tell you that the reason I like this project is that it adds to the regionality or us being a hub. This would be kind of a destination, which means it would be bringing people from the outside into our community. And again, now we start talking about importing dollars. Though it's retail, what I also like about it, this sales tax revenue that's going straight into our city coffers. And it also helps, this kind of a project helps with the attraction of a younger demographic and workforce for our area. Okay, so now moving on to some other activity that we have. We participated 2 weeks ago in a national panel discussion on digital transformation and economic development. We're asked by the Office of the Governor to be on this panel, and it was we're presenting to 300 investors from Brazil, and it was part of the Texas-Brazil Chamber, and these investors are all looking at opportunities in the state of Texas, and our goal, obviously, making a pitch for Kerrville, so on and so forth, talking about digital transformation, which I'm not an expert in, you all know me already. But just talking about its impact and what we can do here locally. But our goal is ultimately, let's get a delegation of these investors, even if it's a handful of them, to come visit our community. So we're working that in right now. Japan. So we also, through our relationship through the state, we've got an interview with them later this week with the Japan Times. It's the largest news outlet in Japan. It's the one that it's kind of like the equivalent of the Wall Street Journal. So it's part of we're getting interviewed as part of a bigger story about the activity in the Austin area and their connectivity with Japan. So they called. I mean, we're definitely not going to say no. We'll be in that one. Last month, we had a industry roundtable luncheon at the Kerrville Hills Winery. That was hosted by the owner, John Rivenbaugh, and talking about the winery incubator program. We had about 20 people in attendance. We had some very good discussions there and looking at how now the craft sector and how we can now best grow that. The legislative side, I was in Austin a few weeks ago, met with the Texas Workforce Commission, Office of the Governor providing an update on what we're doing. Our Top 40 program, we've received submissions. Actually, they've already been capped off. The information has been sent to the judges already. And again, this is an extension of last year's 40 under 40. And what's interesting is we received applications from 7 different counties here in the Hill Country. We kind of spread it out. And lo and behold, there was a lot of interest. That award ceremony is scheduled to be taking place November 5th, and that'll be part of our Business and Innovation Forum. On the forum, we're in the process of finalizing that program and the agenda. We've got a handful of national industry speakers that will be coming in for that event. We're going to be having our main sessions, plenary sessions, breakout sessions, and some panel discussions. So it's a combination of some national speakers, but then also some of our local entrepreneurs, local business people being on some of these panel discussions as well. It's going to be at the Arcadia, and some of our breakout sessions are going to be in some of the downtown shops, so kind of spreading that around. What I like about this is the governor's office said that they would be interested in hosting a small business series specifically designed for Central Texas. So halfway through our 3-day conference, they're going to be hosting from like 8 in the morning to about 2 o'clock the small business series where they're already marketing this, and they're going to be attracting somewhere between 250 and 300 small businesses and entrepreneurs, not just from the Hill Country, but also from Austin and San Antonio, coming into Kerrville for the governor's event as well as our event. So very interested to see how that turns out, and the more people we can have come into our area, the better. The networking gets a lot bigger. And I will say this is the first of its kind event here in Kerrville. It's going to create a good boost for local businesses, but from a marketing standpoint, I mean, it's going to really gain a lot of attention for our area. And look, we've got the governor's team saying, like, we want to be a part of what you all are looking at doing. This is what we can bring to the table. So we're like, well, again, we're not going to say no to that, right? So, 2 more things. One is Eic. We are participating in an EDA presentation later this week. There's a notice of funding opportunity that's going to be issued. I think it's next week. And EDA is going to kind of walk us through how to apply for some of these funds, whatever projects you might have. And this is a part of the America Rescues Act. So we're going to see what, kind of like what projects that we have, how it's a fit, and if there is a fit, then how we can apply for that. And then lastly, the IEDC, myself, I was appointed to the National Racism and Economic Development Committee. It's a small committee. We're taking on some of the tough conversations as it pertains to race relations and inclusivity in our profession. And on that note, Teresa Metcalf, who's our deputy director now, she's been appointed through the IEDC as well on the Membership Development Advisory Committee. So us having a seat at this national organization at their table, I mean, it's that's Kerrville on two different committees nationally in the same organization. Great opportunity for us to get our name out there as a community and to really expand our network. That concludes my report.
On the warehouse business, is that the nature of those businesses? Are they distribution centers? Are they, what kind of warehouse are they looking for?
They're looking at distribution, storage, and what we said is if you can modify your specs just by a little bit, tweak them by a little bit, we could probably get some manufacturing facilities in there.
Are they looking to do some buy and lease?
They're looking at both buy and lease, or there's a greenfield site that they can buy that they can build on.
Okay.
And they're looking on the smaller side, and we're trying to work with them and make a case that there's the projects that we're seeing would be long-term leases for these investors. It's upward of at least 50,000 square feet. It's all up to the investors. It's driven by free enterprise, but we're doing our part, see what we can get.
Okay, thank you, Gil.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hoppy, we have our report on our EIC project status update. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Hoppy on any of those matters?
I want to thank him for the larger format and the big print.
Not a lot of changes from end of last month. You guys met right at the end of the month, so.
Can you give us an update on Killdeer and what all's happened at the facility, how far they are in progress of building that out?
Yeah, so they're going through their process with their design professionals right now. They've done most of their site planning work and have submitted those through the city process. They've also, they're, I believe, in the final stages of their work with their engineering team and their architecture team for the finish out and looking at getting pricing to move forward on that construction project. So we've gotten recent news from them that their Boeing orders are up, and so they're building teams and looking at moving to town very quickly.
Okay. So I guess Gil's reference to some folks moving down here and getting started, is that part of an advanced team that's going to help oversee some of this initial process?
Yes, sir. I think it'll be a dual piece of beginning on some construction work and beginning to build those teams that are doing the work, as well as overseeing the construction of the actual site.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, anybody else have any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the monthly financial report.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good news, I have a presentation today that made it to
All right.
Thank you so much.
PowerPoint somehow, it got lost last month. Okay, so as of the end of June 2021, financial update, it's a little small up there still, but I do have handouts if anybody needs to see that a little bit bigger. We'll start with the good news story, and that's revenue. So sales tax, again, really strong. You can see as of the end of June, we were already at 90% of our budget for the year, so really strong there. And since this, we have received July's sales tax, which would be sales for the month of May. And with that slightly smaller increase at just 5.4, but still puts us over budget already for the year. So we're already going to be about 29,000 better than the total budget for the year after that last sales tax. So I'm looking forward to see what the next few months bring on that. As far as expenses, you'll see regular administrative and debt service transfers there. The only new expenses really would be the $100,000 for the Kerrville Christmas lighting project, which we talked about last month. And then also some architectural fees related to the Doyle School project that we have going on. So total expenses, $340,317, but nothing really major other than that. We have some projects wrapping up, and you can see those numbers there as well.
So just if I'm reading that right, then we're done with Doyle School.
You're not finished with Doyle School, so there's a second project, or second wave, I guess, second agreement to that has not yet been completely paid out. I can get you that exact number, I'm not sure what it was, but the original budget on that was 450,000 and the new budget on that is 650,000 and it's on the back page
Yeah.
of that has committed.
I remember that
funds. It's updated.
Thank you.
Okay. The next page is gonna be cash flow forecast, so we update this every month, just with actuals and then change projections as new projects are added or different things happen. The main thing really to look at here is on the left column is your actuals again. Sales tax there at 3,170,000. That's as of the end of June, doesn't yet contain those July numbers, so really strong, so we're happy with how that's performing. Your ending cash balance of 2.25 million. Remember, all of your money is in tax pool, earning 0.07% as of the last 7 days. So I'm not really happy about that. The market's not helping us, but fortunately, we're doing better than budget in some other areas that's offsetting that. And we'll continue to update this as more projects kick off and more things happen. And then the last page is just the financial analysis, and that's again where you'll see the project analysis for all of the ongoing projects that are happening there with expenses and then remaining fund balance, and then an annual sales tax analysis by month, so you can see kind of how sales tax trended over the course of the year, and then your overall balance there in tax pool. Any questions related to that?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, our next item on the agenda is the EIC budget for fiscal year 2022, which, does everybody have a copy of that?
Are you gonna do EIC or KEC?
AEDC.
Sorry, got those out of order. Mr. Salinas, you're back up.
You're the first guy to make that mistake.
Okay, Mr. Chair, members of the board, actually, before I go through the budget, real quick, following up on the killdeer, just looking at when there's a new company coming into a community, especially when it's an expansion project, they tend to bring in a handful of people, that's upper management. They come in, then they train the local population, and some of the upper management will stay, and then the other ones will end up heading back once they start training the replacement. So that's typically with expansion projects, that's what I've seen like 9 times out of 10. And also, just a heads up, and this happens with all new companies when they come in. Sometimes they're not happy with some of the employees, so you'll start seeing a little bit of turnover at the beginning, and community leadership will start getting calls, and then those calls end up in our office. So that always happens with new companies. It's like, well, such and such came in, and I'm not working there anymore. Well, they've got their system, so it all goes back to training. So it's just being mindful of how some of these expansion projects work. Okay, so as far as what you have here, Mr. Chair, members of the board, you've got the proposed budget for fiscal year 21 and 2022. It's broken down by business expenses, marketing, recruitment, contract services. I'll flush that one out here in a bit. Operations, travel, meetings, and payroll, and then some income that we're trying to account for or figure how much we're going to be having as far as income. And this is a budget that we're actually, at y'all's request, we came back with our budget. And this is the one that we review on a monthly basis at our KEDC board meetings, which board member Maggie is the EIC representative on our board. The slide that you have here is the one that was presented at the last board meeting. It shows our budget request for the last 5 years. And just to kind of note how we've developed over the last 5 years, I came in towards the end of fiscal year 18 and 19, and then 19-20 is when we had our baseline of $400,000 that was approved for the organization for both 20 and fiscal year 21, which is the one we're in right now. But we had taken those voluntary cuts these last 3 years because of COVID. We had no idea what was going to happen, and we wanted to be mindful and respectful of the situation. But now we're here today, and our request is $100,000 over our baseline of $400,000 in the last 3 years, which puts us at about $500,000. And what we're doing there is the other page that you have with you is the proposed KDC marketing programs. So those $100,000 really is for marketing. Our baseline is really just for operations and just a little bit of wiggle room as far as marketing and some recruitment. So these 100 actually is $97,000 is for 3 marketing initiatives. The first one is the Business Innovation Forum, which I mentioned, which is scheduled for November 3rd through the 5th. And as you can see, these are all the different sessions that we're going to be having. And it's a mix of local speakers, some volunteer speakers, and then some nationally recognized speakers that we're bringing in. And those are some of the costs associated with that. And then the Kedc Entrepreneur Center, which is ongoing. We've launched that virtual at this point. But now we're at a point where we need to have some actual speakers associated, some national speakers tied to the actual center. And then also looking at some part-time assistants because we're at a point where the reason myself, we need some help. And then the third item is the Top 40 event, which is also scheduled for November 5th. And again, it's just some marketing collateral material, our keynote speaker. And then the last item is actually business recruitment, which falls under marketing. We've had recruitment in the past, but now because of what we're seeing, and it's not so much that we're going to be out there knocking on doors, looking for companies. There's a way to do that from here. But for instance, the data center project that I was talking about, that's going to require for a small delegation to travel up to where they're from and start, making that deal happen. So that's going to cost money. So coming back to the Business Innovation Forum, that's actually our State of Economic Development event. And originally we're looking at doing some kind of a luncheon. But then we said, well, let's make it kind of like a half day or a 1 day, conference for our local business people and our local entrepreneurs. And then it started getting bigger. And then the office of the governor said, well, we can help you with X, Y, Z. So we said, you know what, let's come up with a Cadillac version and then bring it down. So we brought it down from Cadillac, not to a Toyota, but somewhere in the Chevy Ford range, something that we can do here. Like I mentioned earlier, there's nothing that we've seen like this of its kind in Kerrville. And you look at some of these sessions, we've got some sports tourism, women in leadership, some cybersecurity stuff, video and gaming technology. That is huge right now. And Shriner actually has a program devoted to that, which is esports. We need to really promote ourselves with that. So that's, another session. And then the art of telling your story, and specifically to training some of our local business owners. Craft brew, that's something that, again, we need to be really pushing that out there. A little bit of film, digital media. And then on the Kedc, some leadership mastermind series. And then some speakers coming in and doing some trainees, doing some team building for entrepreneurs, strategic planning for small businesses, so on and so forth. We've never really had a marketing budget. Everything that we've been doing has been internal. Let me take that back. We've had a small marketing budget, but now we're coming back and asking, for some funds to really start, flushing this out. So I'll leave you with this as far as the budget. All of this, except for the recruitment, is designed to upskill our local talent, to really work with our local workforce. Everything's coming back to training our local workforce. And there's research, that's going into this, which is the companies that we're seeing, some of the remote workers that are coming in, the inquiries, they're all IT, it's clean industry related, cybersecurity related. And what they're asking is, what programs do you have in place that'll match with our companies? And right now it's a hodgepodge of stuff, mainly through the university. So now we're kind of coming in and providing that to help attract some of these companies for our local people here. So that's what I have as far as
So
budget.
these expenses are mostly for speakers or experts of some type in these categories you've listed here?
Yes, it's for speakers, experts, and then some of it
Path
is
for
marketing
growth.
collateral material.
Path for
Yes,
growth is good. For an example, Path for Growth would be a special speaker or what would that be?
that is that's a national speaker that we have scheduled for
So
that
speaker,
one. Yeah, that's a national one
possible
that would be coming.
speaker is basically $5,000 for the speaker.
Yeah, and that includes, flying them down.
All the expenses for that one particular guy.
So Gil, the proposal of 500,000 for the budget, roughly 100,000 over the $400,000 baseline before you voluntarily cut back for COVID. So are you saying that the extra 100,000 is mostly for these marketing programs that you've identified here?
Correct, the majority is for that forum, the Courage, which is ongoing, that one's year round, it's just bringing in again some panelists.
That's a new program, the Courage, so that's an additional program.
And that's that incubator program that we have,
Right.
Entrepreneur Center. The Top 40 event, and then also on the recruitment side.
So I'm trying to tie this back to the budget itself. And you've got under expenses on the budget, the Business and Innovation Forum at $20,000 outgo, which is less than what it's showing on this
Okay.
breakdown. But then you also got income from the Business and Innovation Forum of $40,000, which seems like you're actually making more money than you're spending.
We're speculating we're gonna have that kind of income coming in for that. And if we do, that'd be fantastic. We just don't know until we start promoting it and how many people start signing up. Going back to your original question about the line items, yeah, they're kind of spread out. You know, some are under marketing, design, there's a Business Innovation Forum, and then under contract services is where we have the bulk of that. The contract services adds up to about 78 or 79,000. So the bulk of what we're talking about as far as the marketing and bringing some of these experts in is under the contract.
So is that the $18,000?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the confusing is we can't see the parallel.
Yes. Yeah.
On your last page here, your breakdown, you got business, recruitment, and other ongoing. You got 15,000 for recruitment, website design, 12,000, and then it says total 22. That's 27. Is that just a mathematical error, or is it?
Yeah, that's a mathematical error.
Okay.
Yes,
So instead of 22, it's going to be 27, and your 97 would then be 102, I guess.
correct.
And again, these numbers are all, we can't tie one to the other. They're all spread out, these other categories in your overall budget.
Give me an idea on 66-100 board discretionary, 25,000.
That's usually, it's up to the board as far as if they're looking at travel, if they're interested in going to some kind of conference, they pull it from there. And then if there's anything else they want to do with that money. So typically it's been for any travel associated with that. And I don't think they've used most of it in the past.
What was it last year?
Last year,
Actual. Or what's it going to be this year, actual?
this year it's 25 for this year.
No. What are we actually going to expend?
How much did you actually spend
This fiscal
in this
year.
current?
Yeah,
Probably none because it was COVID.
It was
Yeah.
COVID, so nobody was going
Yeah.
anywhere. Yeah.
Well, I guess you got the 25,000 board discretionary, and you've got 20,000 for meals and board meetings.
yeah, the meals and board meetings are separate.
Are you,
I want to go back on KEDC.
you plan
This
on-
never happened when I was there.
I don't remember getting anything when I was
I never
there.
got, maybe I got a
Oh.
sandwich once.
They did.
I got there those. It's a lunch meeting.
So that 20,000 is just for food and board meetings and drink, or what? I mean, what's that?
The one for meals and meetings, yeah, that's just for meals, and usually we don't use all of that up. Discretionary, it's up to the board how they can use it, and typically, like I said, it's travel.
Well, it would have been helpful just for me if, when you presented this, if you had on here a line for what you're projecting for the current fiscal year, so we could see
Okay.
we had this much this year, we're going to X, and here's why. Would be, for me, a much better presentation.
I agree.
Well, maybe, but given COVID, and I don't know, Gil, because this would predate you, But maybe there would be comparable numbers for the year before COVID. You see what I'm saying? I don't know if you could find those.
I'm not even worried about that. I mean, that may be what you're looking for is 3 years running actual numbers or something like that. It just, that's confusing, is that these don't match up to any line item.
Yes.
And
Yeah, I mean,
hopefully,
Conceptually, I mean, even if you were on track with a $400,000 baseline, that's a 100,000, 20% increase, most of which is going to marketing programs, but they're, at least budget-wise, to get to your break-even number, you're showing $55,000 worth of income from those programs. So I'm really confused about where the increase is really going. I heard you say hiring some part-time help, but again, you know, to Danny's point, being able to see kind of how they compare to actual would be helpful. Just on the surface, it sounds like a really large, not just from last year to this year, but, you know, really compound annual growth over the last 4 years has been very significant. And you're doing good work, and it obviously takes money to be able to have an effective program to attract the businesses that we all want to see. But it's hard to feel like, you know, that's something tangible that we can point to that justifies such a large year-over-year increase.
and Gil, that's what I said last time. I don't have a big issue with the number. It's kind of the accounting aspect of it, I think, that's just making me question some things. So my first question is, how do y'all do your accounting? You do it in-house, or does the city help you with it? Or
Usually through the chamber. We have an agreement with the chamber, and they do the accounting for us as part of our old
so are they doing it in-house, or do they have
in-house.
So if you printed out a kind of a year-to-date expenses, do they track these same categories that you have on the proposed budget overview?
Yeah, that's usually, they'll track them. Again, that's in-house. But with some of the new ones, I mean, those are new categories that are coming out.
These are
So we're
obviously
working off of the old ones.
These are obviously account numbers you have here, so
Yes.
presumably it's no big deal to take your general ledger, just drop these account numbers in from the prior years, because these are obviously account numbers out of your general ledger.
Yeah, those are account numbers, and again, maybe that's the mismatch, because what we're proposing now is we're just grabbing from different accounts and coming up with our new program for the
I think
next
what
year.
would be helpful to see is, you know, for example, on line 60100 business recruitment, that line is on the budget request is 10,000. If we could see, you know, what that expense has been over the last year, I think that's what I'm hearing the folks say, is that we'd like to be able to kind of go category by category and just understand, you know, what are the increases. So, for example, if the meals and board meetings is at 5,000, and the year-to-date expense for that, which we're, you know, nearing the end of the budget year for you guys.
20,000?
No.
Oh, it's 5,000. Excuse me. You're right.
You know, that if that's, well, I think it just gives us some perspective on, you know, it is a significant increase. And again, I think the work that you guys are doing is absolutely excellent, and we want to help you guys continue to succeed. But I think we're going to just need a little bit more information just to kind of understand where is the uptick. And then personally, I would prefer the budget be at break even without having to count on the additional income, which is not established. I mean, I would like to see you guys get that and more and be able to deploy that however you decide. But I would prefer, you know, a budget that matches the 500,000, and then any extra is you guys figure out what you want to do with it. But I think that's a fairly sizable number that doesn't have any, at least unless I'm missing something, unless you've got some history to say, hey, here's how we think we're going to get to 55,000 in this additional revenue. Some of that's still unknown, so just my thought. I'd rather be conservative and come up with extra than aim high and come up short.
Yeah.
So this 55,000 is coming from these two conferences essentially. I would pay a fee to go to the 3-day conference.
Correct.
Yes.
And so that's how you're going to get the $40,000.
And with the state marketing it, you're likely to have 200 to 300 people coming. So at least for part of it. But again, it's an unknown. We've never done it before, so.
So Maggie, I'm assuming the board has been through this and approved it.
The board has been through it. I think your questions, accounting questions, are legitimate. I think the issue, we had two issues, I think, when I think back. The transitional situation with the way the KEDC was run under the chamber and what happened, kind of devolving that relationship a little and making it stand alone. That's one issue. The other issue is COVID. And that's really been the entire time almost that Gil's been here, not except for the 6 months maybe. So it's been pretty tumultuous. There really is not a whole lot of past history to look at. But I can tell you from the board standpoint, we eat Jimmy John's sandwiches. We ain't spending a lot of money there. And again, it was COVID, but I didn't see anybody on the board traveling anywhere. Maybe they have in the past. So
No,
I think where
I don't
we are
think
is
we
we're in
ever
a
traveled.
period of aberration for the last 2 years. So I don't know what to tell you, except I think Gil can go back and pull together whatever old chamber era spending he has pre-COVID. That's all I could.
Well, I was on KEDC
Yes.
from the beginning.
Mhm.
So the first budget that we did was associated with absolutely no understanding of what it was going to cost other than to hire someone
Mhm.
and to have a simple marketing budget and so forth. So it really was a pretty straightforward, just launching a group. That went on for 5 years. The money that came in, we didn't spend all the money. We didn't have the ability to spend the money. There wasn't any projects. There wasn't really enough going on to spend the money. So what happened was EIC basically put pressure on to reduce the amount of extra money that was in place.
Right.
So the budget got cut from all sources. I don't remember what the zeros are in here in 17 and 18. Why KPUB and only EIC funded, it looks like, in 17 and 18, because there was probably excess funds available, as I recall. Now, the chamber added costs to KEDC.
Correct.
So the budget would have gone up. I mean,
But
Gil-
not for any programmatic reason.
No, only because you had operational
I
person
agree. I
involved.
agree. That's why I'm
So
saying.
the budget
it's-
went up, but then the budget has been reduced because of your operational side needed it. So really, if you look at this from 316 to 500, it's a $175,000 jump in the budget request over what you actually did last year. Is that correct?
Correct.
This year, 2021 is gonna be 316. And what you've accomplished this year really has been miraculous, but it's just been the two of you doing it on the wing, if you will. This is a big jump in a budget for what's gonna be the outcome. Now, part of what you're saying in the outcome for me is you're gonna have some income that you're gonna try to produce from these two events. That's a dramatic change in the program. I mean, in what the purpose of KEDC, unless we've changed the charter and the purpose of KEDC, I mean, the way it's been done the last 10 years, to my knowledge, is we've funded it. EIC has funded it, the county, the city, KPUB have funded it because it does go into the community for things that need to be done. This is a change of a revenue source that you might generate, but the intention of your marketing, see what you said when you've come here before for me is that Killdeer was a huge marketing event just because we got it. Nobody leaves us alone now. They don't leave you alone because how did you do that? I mean, that's a major thing, as we all know that it happened. So that's why we're being looked at. And now you're on these two boards and people, Kerrville, what's Kerrville? Get you a chance to tell your story again. So those are the real, where the rubber meets the road stories for me. I think this is a high risk doing these forums where you're going to generate money. Now the state's going to be a partner. Are they going to pay to be a partner, or are we going to wait? I mean, we don't know how this is all worked.
It's
do
just
we?
in-kind services.
Yeah.
They're gonna be doing.
Okay, so they're not really going to pay, but who's going to collect the money? You're going to collect the money,
Yeah, we're gonna be collecting the money.
and you're going to keep the money.
Yeah, that's part of what.
You and the state haven't negotiated that yet. Good luck. Anyway, that's all I have to say about
Well,
that.
adding, I think that's a good history and good retrospective, Don. But in this past year, and remember, it was a COVID year, so there was a lot of weirdness going on. But because we wanted to go ahead and start Courage, the Entrepreneurial Center, albeit virtually, there was a lot of contract work. We actually, Gil, I don't know how many hours you paid for contract services to get that up and running.
Oh, I'm not too sure how many hours, but
It was quite a bit, so.
15,000, somewhere around there.
The truth is, if everything had been run, if it hadn't been COVID, if everything had been running normally, they would have needed another full-time worker to keep up with it. That's the truth.
And we said in EIC last year, if you need something money, if you need
Right.
some money, you're gonna
Right.
go with a cut budget, but if you need something, come back to us and we'll write you a check.
Right. And they didn't need it last year.
Let me say something
but
about
they do
COVID.
need it
I
now.
know COVID is the whipping boy of 2020, but let me say something about it. We had it, when we came in here, we reduced our own income expectations because of COVID. And what happened? We've blown it out of the water. Really, COVID has been a benefit to Kerrville. In reality, the income that's coming into this community is unbelievable. People have moved here, they're buying houses here because they can work remotely. Hello, they're in Kerrville and they're spending money. I mean, this town is spending money like I've never seen it happen. Traffic's terrible here. I'm gonna move. No. I'm not gonna move. No, we want this to happen. We want this to happen.
What are we asking Gil to do? I mean, we can sit here and debate this, but what are we asking? Do we want him to come back with a broken out budget, a comparison from last year? We need to give him some instruction.
Well, I think what we're talking about is just having this, just like this, for 19, 20, and 20 and 21. That's all.
Well, if this is on the same accounting system that the chamber uses, the chamber does an actual to budget comparison, so it ought to be pretty easy. You've got the GL codes, you ought to be able to just drop in the actual and put
You have
that.
to project the rest of this year, but we're getting pretty close to the end.
Okay, all right. So if I hear you correctly, last year and this year, projecting and then into next year.
19, 20, the actual, projected 20 to 21, and just lined up next to these accounts, just like you got them here.
Well, I think maybe you're saying the same thing I'm thinking, but what I'm seeing is you've got a budget for 21, 22. That needs to be compared to actual for 2021, 20 to 21. Is that right? I want to look at last year compared to this.
Well, I think I don't want to create a bunch of work here, but 19, 20 might also be useful, since that was more of a normal year too.
Right.
To have that on here, look at all 3 years.
Actual, and budget.
Yeah, well, you're gonna have actual 19, 20, you're gonna have projected 2021, because we're not at the end of the year yet.
Right. But we're close.
We're close. And so you ought to be able to get pretty good on that, and then the budget for 21, 22 that he's already got.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing, we just want to see some breakdown, that there's not an objection to, the very creative and thoughtful work that you guys have done to figure out how to continue to promote Kerrville and grow our local entrepreneurship base. I just think we need that additional detail to make a decision. Just so we understand from a timing standpoint, is this budget doesn't start till November for you guys, is that right?
Correct.
So we've got a little bit of time to get this finalized?
It usually gets packaged with the overall city budget.
Okay.
Just
When does-
August.
Yeah, well, your action item right after this is the budget for your budget, which obviously one of the larger known
Right.
expenses is the KDC budget. So just be mindful that we need to kind of move the process along.
You're up against the wall.
Yeah, we like that. Obviously EIC is a component unit fund that goes into the overall budget process as we move.
Okay,
through
so how
August
about
and
just
September.
brainstorming here, and I can't speak for anybody but myself, but how about a prospective approval pending final review of this data that we're requesting? Do we want to commit to that, or just push it and wait till next
What
month?
date do you have to have give an answer from? What's the date?
So we'll have a budget presentation, which this is not a huge part of it, but it goes into the proposed budget for the city is submitted at the end of July. the budget approval process. We have a budget presentation on August 10th, and then a subsequent one on August 24th, with final approvals, the first meeting in September.
But even if we approved a budget for $312 for KDC contribution this year, if we don't yet have a contract on what we're going to contribute to KDC, we could still negotiate less than that, couldn't we?
Yeah, so remember that you're in year 3 of a 3-year contract, or you're going into year 3 of a 3-year contract. So I think what you may be able to do is to approve your prospective budget contingent upon that as an exhibit to, because that contract, that 3-year contract, every year it's by annual appropriation.
Okay.
So you may be able to approve the budget overall and then have finer detail coming back and have that as an exhibit to that year 3 contract.
So you're saying approve the EIC budget overall, we don't have to get granular about KEDC, is that what I'm
I think
hearing?
we could bring that back and you guys can
Okay.
approve that as part of the annual appropriation.
That sounds like a good approach.
But Greg, getting back to your earlier point about the revenue from these events and trying to get the budget to a break-even point. So if you got $55,000 of income and you wanted to get break-even without anything, that would mean we'd either have to up the contributions from the stakeholders or reduce expenses by that amount. Is that feasible in your opinion, Gil?
It's doable. A little bit more work on our end, but
I mean, in my mind, there could be a number that's a very conservative revenue projection.
But Greg, if you take the 55,000 out, because their net operating is 555. So if you took the 55 out, they're back down to the 500, which is what they're asking for.
No, I know, but I mean, Greg, I think your point was the net income of zero without factoring in any kind of revenue from those events.
Yeah, so their net income just on the 500,000 is negative 55. So then they got to have the
Right,
I got you.
income from the other two
I got
sources.
you. I'm sorry.
right.
So I mean, there may be some very low bar that's a very conservative revenue estimate that maybe we could all get comfortable
Well,
with, including in the budget.
And let me say this: I don't want to interpose my opinion for that of the KDC board. I mean, they've come up with this budget. I guess the point I would want to make is that I would not receive with favor a request somewhere during the year of hey, we ended up not making a dime on this. We budgeted all, we spent it all. Can we have some more money?
Yes,
So I think I
agree.
would be fine to withdraw my objection just with that understanding that, you know, I would expect KDC board to be conservative in how money's spent, since you're anticipating income that you don't have any history. I'm sure you will make something, maybe you'll make more, but I just don't want that to be a reason for KDC to go in the red and then have to come back and ask for additional.
And I think that's what was my kind of the backdoor to my question to Maggie, is that if they're reviewing these on a monthly basis, they're going to see if there's a downward trend. And
right.
I'm assuming that you'd go, okay, wait a minute, we can't fly 4 people to Washington D.C.
Well, we haven't had that problem with KDC, at least in my
No, and I agree.
understanding.
I think they're going to be, good fiduciary and take that responsibility seriously.
You know, Gil, these are that's a fall event, correct? So I mean, you're
Yes,
going to
that's-
know the success of that event early
Very
on
early.
within your
You
fiscal
can make
year, and then
adjustments.
can adjust,
Sure.
expenditures thereof.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, how much do you have in surplus now? Do you know?
oof. Not
Not very much.
6 months worth like, a normal organization should have. I'd say about 15, maybe 20, somewhere around there. Yeah, and
So you could absorb a partial loss of revenue through eating into your surplus if you had to.
yeah, we had to, yeah. And again, just the last year and a half, almost 2 years, time that I've been here, we've gotten very creative with our funding.
And I wanna say
the bulk
thank
of
you.
it is just operations.
Again, I have no issues with that. And again, to Don's point, what happened was the surplus in KDC got it got larger than their budget. And
Right.
we were still paying those funds. And we
Right.
finally said, until you spend your budget down, we're done. And so, your surplus down. So that's how you got back down to little to none.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, I think the board, the form is a reach. The form is something that's not been done, so that's the big unknown. But it's sure worth a shot to have the visibility, and have 200 or 300 people in town. The other thing
Could
that
this be
has,
carved out? Could this be carved out as a special project?
Absolutely, there's nothing says that we can't. You're talking about like a base
Well,
budget and then.
yeah, you have KEDC budget, and then you have this special project. It's a carve out, it's separate fund, separate event. It lives or dies on its own.
Yeah, it could be treated separately, for sure.
And that way it's not misrepresenting what's in the budget. And where these numbers that are in the budget are not, that's what we're trying to do, is trying to figure out where the numbers are. Because some of these numbers over here in this one sheet are stuck in this.
Yeah.
And we don't have to, we get down to what's really in here, but we carve this out as these two events here. As, because they're income producers. They're different, I mean, not that it's about income, but it is about that. It's about doing two things at once, paying for it and getting some more players. Just a thought.
So, and I'm curious because my feeling is I'm okay with the budget. I don't like the format particularly, but do we have a consensus that, are we arguing about the 500,000, not arguing, or discussing about the 500,000, or just the way that the money's being presented to us, the budget's being presented?
Gary, I'm a little bit on the fence. I mean, it's not really a $500,000 budget. It's a $555,000 budget with $55,000 of projected outside revenue.
Right.
And that's a big increase from where we are. And I'm open-minded about it. I just don't feel like I have enough information to say, yeah, I'm good with it. I don't have the background you guys do of, being, over the last several months or years of dealing with it. So I'm more of a newcomer, but I would really like to see that to actually make a decision on, because just looking at the historical percentages, it's a lot. It's a big increase.
It is, and I think that's what's going to be difficult, because I don't think we're going to see justification based on the last 2 or 3 years.
I don't either.
We've never had this type of opportunity. We've never
before.
had these type of growth. We've never had this caliber of staff. So I understand, and I don't disagree with you. I'd like to see those numbers also. I don't think a $555,000 budget is going to match up to a 213 or even that 365. It's just that they're going to be completely different.
Yeah, it's apples and oranges, unfortunately, given the past history.
Well,
But I'd still like to see it.
Sure.
I mean,
I think it's worth looking at.
I'm not looking for justification of every number. I don't feel like, for me, being my professional background, I'm not prepared to support it at this moment because I don't know. All I want to see is, what are we doing? I'm 100%, you guys are doing a great job, and I want to give you every dime we can to have you keep doing what you're doing. But I just don't feel like right now.
Okay.
I mean, all I'm asking is, what are these differences for? Why are we doing it? Great. We're going to take some risk. I got no problem taking risk on the meetings. That's great. It's a step forward. We're not going to be successful in everything we do, but I just don't feel like at this point that there's enough data, at least for me, to say, okay, let's do it. I just like, and I don't need a lie. I don't need every dollar. I don't need, a 2-hour discussion that we're going to go to Washington, we're going to go to LA, what the heck we're going to do. But just to know that we've got, just kind of in our ideas, what they have. Maggie, you must be happy with it. I don't know if you've seen more detail than this at your board level or not, but.
Well, we know a little more detail about projects and potential future maybe, but for me, I've got a 1-year history. And this 1 year was, as a board member, this 1 year was a little strange for a lot of reasons. All I can say is I have been so impressed by the caliber of work that Teresa and Gil have put into this. Heart and soul, all along, giving money back, working close to the bone on everything and putting in countless hours. So I can say, having observed for 1 year, that I think we're very, very lucky to have an exceptional staff And we're very, very lucky to have gotten Killdeer, because that has like jettisoned us to a new level. And that's all I can tell you, really, because I've only been there a year.
Oh,
But I
again.
do know from the little I've heard of past history and the iterations, the 3 different iterations of this animal since it was first started and Trevor Hyde was on the board, you can't even do apples and oranges with the past lives of the organization. So I think you're right about the numbers. I think we ought to look at all 3 years and see what we can see. But I'm just telling you, it's really hard to draw comparisons.
And all I'm saying is, I agree, but I feel like there's a level, as a board member,
I
have
agree.
a certain level of due diligence that I feel compelled to do.
That's fine.
And
I think that's
I'm not gonna, I think we need this other information for me to feel good the fact that I've done the due diligence, knowing there's gonna be very little comparison that it's
Sure.
gonna easily be able to do, like going forward it probably will be. But in my position, as I sit here, I think there's a certain level of due diligence I feel obligated to do. And
I think it's
All
a
right, so
great
Gil,
idea.
do you have some idea of the information that's being requested?
Yes, I just need
Okay,
one
so
more time. Give me the,
here's what I think we would like for you to do is to compare this year and last year, this budget year that you're in, projected forward, and last year actual numbers against this proposed budget. And so you're going to have some lines that say, 2 years ago it was 1,000, this year it's 2,000, next year it's still 2,000. Move on to the next line. You're going to have a lot of stuff that hasn't been budgeted in prior years. That's fine. We just want to see that. If you will prepare that, and then I'd like to ask either Danny or Greg to volunteer to get a draft of that from you, to look over it, to make sure that it has the data the way we want it presented. And then you guys, one of you guys or both of you guys, give some feedback in terms of format to make sure Gil is getting it right, so that when we see it, we can move forward without having to go back around the table to get it revised again.
That's a great idea.
One of y'all agree to do that? Or
I'm happy to do it, yeah.
It's a great
Anything
idea.
else to do?
And did we want it for 3 years? We talked about that, because that way you'd have a chamber year, a COVID year, and
If
this year.
that's within your capacity to do, I think 3 years would
3
be
years.
Yeah.
great.
yeah,
if
no
you can do
problem.
that.
All right, so you'll get us that. We know you got a November deadline. We'll take action on the EIC budget here in just a minute. I think we've got a path forward for how we can work this together and keep everything on track. All right, anybody got anything else to
Can
add?
I just say one thing? Because unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be here next month. I'm going to be on vacation. But I will say that I will communicate with you about the board's, reporting back to the board and the board's feelings about the budget at that time, so you'll know
Okay, that would be
Right.
helpful.
position will be.
And approval is for next board meeting.
We will have it on
Contingent
the
on-
agenda for next board meeting.
Okay, all right.
Yes. Thanks, Gil. Appreciate you fielding our questions.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Our next item is the EIC proposed budget.
And let me just say, Gil, if you need me to come by, when you get starting working with whoever's gonna do this for you, I mean, we're happy to come by your office and sit down and talk with whoever you need me to talk with.
All right, will do, thanks.
Okay, so we'll talk about your budget a little bit, obviously with the largest one being the one you just discussed. Just looking down on the left column, obviously the FY21 estimated, so we'll continue to update that, each month as we go along. That's what we're estimating right now. Sales tax, we talked a little bit about that last time, that we're estimating 3% over what we're projecting 3% over what we're estimating this year to end. So not FY21's budget, but what we're estimating the end of the year to be.
So you've adjusted that upward in accordance to what the flow has been?
Yes.
Right, and so we're kind of projecting what we think this fiscal year is gonna end at, and then we're adding 3% to that,
3%
because
for next year.
we were really conservative going into 21, for obvious
What
reasons.
did it grow this year? Do you remember?
Our annual budget was $3,000,005.
We're gonna end over 4 million, I believe. That's our projection, of course.
402.
So, on average, 15 to 20% a month over budget. So depending on, like I said, July is looking at 5.4% right now. So really kind of depends on what the next few months show. If we're showing a leveling off, from some things that we've, just not
So
been able to
3%
anticipate.
is a pretty conservative number.
Very conservative. So the Federal Reserve is estimating right now a growth of 3.3 for FY22. And we're just sticking around 3. You just don't know. When you look at, like we talked about last time, our top 5 sales tax payers are 30% of our total sales tax. So with them being, retail and food service and things that are very volatile, you just don't know. That could change.
So it seems to me that going with 3% over this year's projected actual is a pretty aggressive move, because we've had this unprecedented year of consumer spending in light of what's going on with the pandemic. What do you hear in the broader realm of? I mean, is that aggressive, or have we set a new bar?
It's really hard to say. We did budget really conservatively for fiscal year 21 for sales tax, and everything we did, expenditures citywide, we budgeted very conservatively. So, is this growth related to that conservative approach that we're seeing that kind of a difference? Is it, basically over budget? Are we, being too conservative? I feel like it's conservative, 3%, just based on what I see every month. I do a really deep analysis of sales tax and watching business growth, online sales, just things that we haven't seen before that are coming on. We watch it really, really close. So I feel very comfortable in saying that 3% is very conservative.
And the bottom line is nobody knows.
You don't, and that's
why we have to review the budget on a monthly basis
Right.
to see where we stand.
Right, and we talk about this all the time. We would like to just take 2020 and toss it, but we just
Right.
don't know, and so we don't really like to use that as comparative data at all. Going back to 2019 is just too far away with the growth that we've seen, so it's really just estimated based on, like I said, we break this sales tax down into small pieces every month and look at who's doing what businesses out there are trending up, who's coming in new, who's going away. So we look at all those things every month. So I'm very comfortable in saying that 3% is conservative.
We try to be consistent with the way that we've also budgeted sales tax revenue projections for the overall city budget, so that those two pieces match up. I think there's a number of things at play. We talked about some of them today. Certainly, throughout the pandemic, what we saw was Kerrville's regional economy, which was a net winner, as you all mentioned earlier. We think that's going to continue to drive into the future. It certainly has driven our city economic development strategy as far as regional retail goes. In addition, you did have a stimulus component, certainly, that played into that. However, I will say you've also got other new stimulus that's being put into play, like child tax credits that are going to be pumping through the next 6 months. So there's a lot of pieces that the crystal ball is hard to see. Again, we feel like 3% is a fairly conservative approach, and we'll continue to monitor it month by month.
So is that 3% what the city's using for budgeting?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
That's
sir.
I
correct.
think we ought to be consistent with the city, since it's best information available.
Right now, that's what we're using on the general fund is 3% as well.
Now, we've got, in the project contributions, we've got, I think, 700,000 that we've committed but not yet expended. So I assume we anticipate that entire 700,000 being expended in FY22.
I'm sorry. say it
I'm
again.
not following you.
Well, on our project analysis, we show that we've committed 3.2 million, we've dispersed 2.5 million, we have remaining 700,000 to be dispersed under our current commitments. So I assume that,
Falls in this next fiscal year.
yeah, that 700,000 is going to be spent in fiscal year 22.
I think that depends on project progression.
Yeah, it depends what occurs over the next 3 months and what occurs in next fiscal year.
Okay, well, assuming then between now and the end of FY22,
Correct.
we've got a projected ending cash balance of about 5.1 million.
That's correct.
Correct.
Really, we're probably going to be more like 4.4 with no further commitments
Yeah.
that we make on anything
That's right.
Correct.
before
Just
this year.
depending on the
Correct.
timing, but yes, at the end of that timeline,
Okay.
yes, sir, that's
Right.
correct.
Right, because timing is the key factor there, and that depending on what projects you decide to commit to in 22 as well. So we talked about most of this last time, but again, not a lot of change. The big change, of course, being KEDC, for whatever your decision is there. Administrative service fee, it is an increase there, but I wanted to point out, just because I figured you would want to know, in FY19, that fee was $180,000, and then it has been $185 since then. So a little bit of an increase there. Debt service, of course, are related to committed projects. And then you will see the highlighted yellow. I did move this from the FY22 budget over to the estimated 21 because that's already been spent. So without committed projects, as we talked about, you're looking at a net revenue of about $2.6 million with this budget in front of you. And we are asking for action on this today, obviously for the reasons EA mentioned, but willing to do what we can to help out with that.
Just curious on the administrative services fee. We just make up a $10,000 increase. Is there a justification for that? Or you just
No, you recall, we talked about it about 3 years ago, about steadily increasing that. When we went through and did the analysis, it was about $250,000 in services rendered. Where we were at was about $100,000, and so we did step that up to 180, and we've been with the mindset that it was going to be a steady increase. Certainly, expenses continue to increase from a payroll standpoint.
He needs some money.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
all
yes.
legal fees.
It's all mine.
Yeah, wouldn't most of that, in breaking down the actual cost be labor cost?
Yes, sir. The vast majority of that labor cost for financial accounting services, for project management services, for the administration, basically.
I mean, would it make sense to sort of peg that increase with kind of what the city does with their budget on personnel costs?
We could. There's a whole other, hosting of other factors that we could play into that. I would say it probably would be higher than this if we want to go that route. I mean, we're looking at a 3% increase, so we can start getting pretty granular if you want.
We don't throw that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I was going to adjourn the meeting.
That'll solve it.
yeah, I was just thinking most organizations kind of have a budget target for personnel increases, and that would maybe take out some of the ups and downs of year-to-year changes with that.
Yeah, we just tagged it 3 years ago. We just made the conscious decision to tag it a 5,000 increase going forward, but really we can do that however you guys want to.
I'm fine with it. I was just curious where we came up with the number.
Yes, sir.
I know there was a pretty big analysis done several years ago
We
of the
did.
breakout with
Yeah.
project management, and engineering, legal.
We
those
may
kind of
want
things.
to do that again at the
Sure.
5-year mark, but
Sure.
all right, this is what's in front of us. Anybody want to make a motion on this?
Make a motion, we approve the budget as submitted.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Nope, all in favor, raise your hand. That carries unanimously. All right. More paper than we usually have, and I've now lost
On
my.
your agenda.
There we go. Okay, well, that covers our action items. We have 2 things on the executive session agenda, and so I will entertain a motion to go into executive session under sections 551071 and 087 to discuss the 2 items on our executive session agenda, 7A and 7B.
I move.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor? Thank you.
Can we take a short break on
Yes.
our way? Thanks.
5:21, and we are out of executive session. No action items are to be taken. Does anyone have any items for future agendas or any announcements? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Woo-hoo.